Sorry, I forgot to record. So you don't have to start all over. But okay, so this is a big clue that the person who wrote this story is either writing about people in Canada or that he's actually from Canada himself. But anyway, we have clues there, and then later on we'll see more clues that this man is from Canada. Okay. What happened in the story so far?
So a woman bought a gnome.
Mm-hmm. Little...
that she saw, that she thought would fit in her garden perfectly.
Mm-hmm.
Then the next morning it got knocked down by someone. We don't actually know by whom, but that's a fact. And she blamed another woman's voice for this.
Yeah.
And that's where we stopped.
Okay. And then there was something else that happened though. So the gnome got knocked down. She blamed the boys, and the boys were gone, right? One was in Calgary and one was in the forest.
Yeah, so it's not them.
So it's not them. But then something happened, something else happened to the gnome. What happened after that? Leda, do you remember?
I don't remember.
You don't remember? Bogdan, do you remember?
I can't remember.
Okay. Vlad, do you remember? No, nobody remembers what happened to the gnome. This is the most important part. So in this
the gnome vanished completely.
Yes, the gnome vanished completely. The next morning, the gnome was gone. At first, Dorothy thought he must be concealed among the clump of daylilies at the foot of the rockery. But when she went out to the garden, there was no sign of him. This time, her anger was mixed with other feelings. She was a little bit afraid, she realized. She looked up and down the empty street, but no curtain moved. Most of the people were at work. She went inside, found the number kept handy by the phone, and called the police. Okay, so do you think this is a little bit of an overreaction?
Well, probably no, because she got her things stolen.
Okay, all right. Would you call the police if you had your garden gnome stolen?
Yeah, sure.
How about Lera? Would you call the police if you had something stolen like this?
No, if it was no, I think no. But if this thing is important for me, of course.
Okay, okay. So if it's your tablet, maybe you'll call the police. Maybe if it's your phone or something like that. Okay, Bogdan, would you call the police?
Yes, of course. Gnome is very important. Of course.
Okay, okay, sounds good. Maybe Taya would call the police as well. Let's see, Taya next. Okay, so this is where we stopped the story. So we'll continue from here and we'll finish out the story probably today. Okay. I'll get us started and then I'll have you guys read a little bit of it each. Paulina, do you have a printout of the story?
Yes.
Okay.
I have on the phone.
Oh, okay, okay, that's fine too. If you want, I will have it on my screen and you could just read it on my screen as well, okay? Okay, so she calls the police and I'll start here. We'll get someone around as soon as we can, said the police operator when she explained there'd been a robbery. He didn't seem to be giving it very high priority. She made herself a cup of coffee and noticed that her hand was shaking when she poured it. She drew the living room curtains halfway to. When a car pulled up outside, she was relieved to see it was Nora, and then she remembered that her friend was leaving that afternoon to visit her sister in Charlottetown and had said she would drop by to say goodbye. So Charlottetown is another city. It's on Prince Edward Island in Canada. Okay. What a dirty trick, Nora said when Dorothy told her what had happened. and they went to look at the empty spot where the gnome had stood. A few moments later, a young policeman arrived, but he seemed to lose interest when Dorothy explained that it was a garden ornament that had been stolen. Okay, ma'am, he said, taking out a notebook with a resigned air. Let's get the particulars. As he was going out of the door afterward, he stopped. Frankly, ma'am, I wouldn't get my hopes up about seeing your gnome again. There's been a lot of vandalism going on. It's probably the kids who've chucked it somewhere now. Okay. So he had a resigned air about him. It just means he really doesn't care. It's like, oh my gosh, what is going on here? Talking about a garden gnome. Then he said he wouldn't get his hopes up. I wouldn't get my hopes up about seeing your gnome again. It's a very good phrase, okay? So if you guys want a good phrase that people use quite often, this is a good one. It's used very, very often, okay? So I wouldn't get my hopes up just means don't anticipate it happening, okay? It's probably not going to happen. What is vandalism again? We talked about it last week.
It's something that when happens, the police arrives.
Okay, sometimes the police arrive. Give me examples of vandalism. Bogdan, what's an example of vandalism?
I don't know, stolen gnome. It can be.
Okay, any others? Any others?
Yeah, something stolen, something broke.
Okay, something broken. How about spray painting on buildings?
Yeah, that's vandalism as well.
Okay, how about drawing on a dirty car? If someone has a dirty car and you write some Russian words on there, is that vandalism?
Well, depends on the words.
Yeah, okay. It depends on how much you love your car, right? Maybe it's vandalism, maybe no. Let's see, is throwing grapes at people from your balcony, is that vandalism?
Yes.
It depends again. I think vandalism is usually breaking or destroying something. So this throwing grapes is more of just a nuisance. Okay. Welcome, Gabby. I saw you came in. We're on page 3 of the story Wish You Were Here. Okay. If you're still here. I think you're still here.
Well,
No.
I don't see her.
No, she disappeared. Okay, she was here for a minute. Technical difficulties. Okay, Stan, can you get started? We'll read.
Sure. Okay. Nora, said Dorothy after closing the door. Would you help me? That's exactly what I was thinking before you arrived. That may be some kids threw the gnome down the ravine. I know I won't be able to sleep tonight for wandering. But down there's not a place I dare to go on my own. Well, said her friend looking at her watch. If we're not too long, because I have to do some things before I catch my plane. The two women went cautiously down the steep stairs. The optimistic parks department had signposted Nature Trail. Boost Trail is more like it. Dorothy thought to herself as they picked their way past the beer bottles discarded by teenagers and the empty wine bottles left by what's this word?
Discarded.
No. Left by the something men.
Left by the decrepit men. Sorry, I'm a little bit.
Decrepit men in bulging raincoats.
Bulging
raincoats whom she had seen emerging from the ravine. It's just that I'd feel better knowing, said Dorothy as they reached the viaduct. Even if he's smashed into fragments by now.
Okay, good. So there's probably a lot of words here. Let's see. What is a ravine? Do you guys know what a ravine is?
Yeah, we have the same word in Russian.
Ah, okay, then easy peasy. That makes it much easier. So they want to go down into a ravine where kids go to hang out, right? And so they have a sign posted, and the parks department was over optimistic about putting this sign that said nature trail, right? So there's a little sign that says the nature trail down this ravine. Booze trail is more like it. Booze is a slang term, or, well, I wouldn't say slang term because it's used so often now, but it's a term for that we use for alcohol. Okay, so she's like, it's alcohol trail, more like it, right? So they picked their way past beer bottles discarded by teenagers. So teenagers would go down there, drink their beer bottles, discard them, just throw them, right? And empty wine bottles left by the decrepit men in bulging raincoats. So there's some homeless men there, and they have their bulging raincoats. Their raincoats are kind of big because they stuff everything that they own inside these raincoats, right? And decrepit. Decrepit is just dirty, not pleasant. It's really kind of terrible thing, okay? All right, so, oh my gosh, Gabby keeps entering the waiting room area. So we'll see. And so they're just looking for the remnants of this gnome. They're looking for shattered pieces of the gnome because, well, Dorothy just wants to know where her gnome went, right? She just wants to know what happened to the thing. Okay. Any other questions? No question. Yeah. Okay.
No questions.
Everything's clear. All right. Lera, do you want to continue, please? Pigeons rattled up noisily.
Pigeons, yes, rattled up noisily at their approach, and as they probed the undergrowth. A man lying on a pile of newspapers startled them by suddenly snorting in his sleep. Just don't let this affair get to you, Nora said after they had climbed panting back up the steps. Look, I'll tell you what you will do. Next time you come to the cottage, after I get back, I'll go into the garden center and see if you have got another one. Back home, Dorothy put on a cheerful front as Nora started her car. Have a safe trip, dear, she said. Don't make too much of a pig of yourself at those lobster suppers. Walking up the path, she couldn't help looking sadly at the vacant spot in the rockery. It became a routine every morning for her. First thing, she'd pull back the living room curtains, half expecting to see him back there. Darn it, she missed him just as if he had been a person. She'd shrug it off and after breakfast get out her gardening gloves and tools and busy herself with the weeding.
Okay, good. So they're still in the ravine and the pigeons rattled up noisily at their approach. So you know how pigeons make their little flapping noises as they fly away. And they probed the undergrowth. So undergrowth is just bushes everywhere, and they're looking for these fragments. A man lying on a pile of newspapers startled them by suddenly snorting in his sleep. So some old guy is down there and kind of scared them a little bit. Don't let this affair get to you. We'll get you a new gnome, don't worry, okay? Here's a good word, panting. Nora said after they climbed panting back up the steps. Panting is something that a dog does, right? So they were, you know, it's so steep that they're climbing up that they're getting out of breath. They are panting. So that means to breathe heavily. Okay, good. Here's another good phrase. Dorothy put on a cheerful front. So that just means she put on a happy face, but inside she wasn't feeling so happy, right? So putting on a front means you're giving a certain attitude toward people, even though you don't really feel that way. Okay. And then she started getting sad about her gnome. Will I ever see my beautiful gnome again? Okay. Paulina, you want to try these two paragraphs here?
Okay. The first postcard arrived the following Wednesday. Finding it in the box, she assumed it was from Nora. But instead of a picture of Prince Edward Island, it had a photograph of the Rockies. It was postmarked Calgary, and the message, in a neat, round, almost childish hand, said, "Dear Dorothy, having a great time. Saw a rodeo yesterday. Wild. Loved Mr. Gnome." She sat down on the chair in the hallway. Her heart was racing. A trick. It had to be a trick. But who would go to such lengths to scare her?
So who would go to such lengths? Lengths is the tough word, yeah. Good. So she was expecting a postcard from Prince Edward Island. Instead, it's a nice postcard with the Rockies on it. And she's getting a postcard from the crazy gnome, right? Let's see, her horse was racing, had to be a trick, but who would go to such lengths to scare her? This is also a really, really good phrase. To go to such lengths means to do something really beyond normal just to scare her, right? Seems a little bit excessive. Okay, good. Bogdan, can you read?
Yes. 2 days later, there was another postcard in the box, this time from Vancouver. She didn't even bother looking at the picture. "Dearest Dorothy," said the message. "What a wonderful city. You really should see it. Just spectacular. See you soon, Mr. Gnome." The handwriting was the same. Angrily, she tore it into pieces until her fingers hurt, trying to reduce it to smaller and smaller scraps. She took them into the living room, put them in the fireplace, and lighting a match. Watched the blue flame dance until the little heap was reduced to ashes. She didn't tell Norman about it, but each morning she watched for him to come, sometimes giving him a cheerful greetings, then anxiously going through her mail. To her relief, no more cards arrived except one from Nora. A week went by and she was beginning to forget the whole thing, when one morning a card with
a foreign stamp.
Foreign stamp turned up in the mailbox. Without even reading the caption, she recognized the picture as that of flying full wings of the Sydney Opera House. "Dear Dorothy," she read, here I am in Sydney. Never thought I'd make it this far. Australian, super friendly. Love, Mr. Gnome. She walked
unsteadily. Yeah,
unsteadily into the dining room, got out of the bottle of brandy and poured herself some in wine glass.
Australian brandy.
Australian brandy. She noticed with a teeny shudder Now she knew for certain there would be more cards.
Okay, good. So she's feeling uneasy. Oh my gosh, I got this postcard. This is crazy. And she noticed that the brandy that she got out and poured was Australian. And she had a little bit of a shudder. A shudder is just a shake, right? So, oh, right, I'm disgusted with this whole thing. Right? Good. Any questions here? Everything
No.
pretty clear? Okay, good. Vlad, can you read this part? Are you still here, Vlad? Vlad? No? Yes, he's here. Oh, Gabby, you're finally here.
Yeah, I'm here.
Okay, let's hope you don't disappear again. Okay, Vlad.
Dear Dorothy, she read.
The next one arrived a couple days later.
Oi.
Mhm.
The next one arrived a couple days later. Norman, she called as he walked across the lawn towards next door. Would you mind coming here a minute? What is the matter, Miss Graham?
Mrs. Graham.
Mrs. Graham.
Mhm.
He said,
Flicking his
back his hair. You look pretty shaken, but news. Well, it's not that, but would you mind reading this card for me? He gave her a funny look. Sure, Mrs. Graham, if you want me to. Maybe her eyes were playing up. Dear Dorothy, he read in a monotone. Please don't worry, but I'm laid up with some sort of bug. I'll keep you posted. Love, Mr. Gnome.
Mhm.
Norman shook his head. That's what it says, Mrs. Graham. I don't understand. Funny short of message. Why is it signed like that?
Signed.
Signed.
Okay. So she runs up to Norman. Who's Norman again? Do you guys remember? Anybody? You don't know? Norman's the mailman, the postman,
Yeah.
right? Okay. So the postman.
Oh, I had my microphone muted. I said that he was mailman.
That's fine. That's fine. So it's the postman. So she runs up to the postman and says, "Norman, would you mind coming here a minute?" Right? "What's the matter, Mrs. Graham?" He was flicking his hair back. "You look pretty shaken. Bad news?" "Well, it's not that, but would you mind reading this card for me?" So she's wondering if maybe her eyes are playing up. This means that you're seeing things, right? So your eyes are playing up means you're not seeing what you think you're seeing, or your mind is playing up. Maybe you're thinking what isn't really happening, right? Good phrase there. He says, dear Dorothy. He read it in monotone. Okay, monotone means single tone, one tone. Dear Dorothy, please don't worry, but I'm laid up with some sort of bug. I'll keep you posted. Love, Mr. No. That's what it says. Funny sort of message, right? So the mailman is reading the postcard to her and doesn't really understand what's going on. Okay. Here's a good phrase. The gnome is laid up with some sort of bug. What do you think this means? Lara, do you have anything?
That's what I wanted to ask you about.
Okay, let's think about it. Does anybody have any guesses? Lara, any guesses?
No idea.
Okay, Gabby, any guesses?
No, I don't know.
No, you don't know? Okay, so it's just a general term that means you're sick. there's some sort of bacteria or virus or something, some sort of bug inside you that is just making you sick. So he's laid up. Laid up means, you know, taking it easy, laid up with some sort of bug, right? He'll keep us posted. Now, is this kind of silly? Do you think it's normal? Bogdan, does your garden gnome get sick? Yeah,
Garden gnome gets sick.
Every winter gets the flu, coughs all over. Yeah. Okay.
Yes.
Okay. So we have a gnome that's sick in Australia, and this will play out a little bit. Okay. Taya, can you read this one line if you're here?
Okay.
All right.
Oh my god.
She asked him if he wouldn't mind coming inside and sitting at the kitchen table. She showed him the first card she'd received.
Okay, perfect. Do you want to keep going?
Okay.
All right.
Look, Mrs. Graham, I don't know who would do a rotten thing like that, but what you've got to do is pay no mind to it. You hear me? It's just someone trying to scare you. Well, don't think about it. He slung his bag over his shoulder as he got up to go. This is what I will do. I will keep an eye open, and if any more cards come like that, I will knock and give it to you so you don't get scared. Like, I mean, finding it in the box.
Okay, perfect. So he's a mailman, right? Thank you very much, Taya. He's a mailman, and so he has this big bag of mail. It's got a big bag of mail, right? And slung is the past tense of sling. So he slings it over his shoulder as he's on his way out. Sling, slung, slung. Interesting verb, yeah? And so good plan, right? I will knock and I will give you the card so you don't find it in the mail by yourself. Okay, good. And here's a lovely picture of our gnome by the Sydney Opera House, yeah? Who knows what he's doing there, the crazy gnome. All right, Gabby, read this and then a little bit of the next page.
That night, Dorothy had a strange mixed-up dream in which she looked outside and the gnome had come back. Only when she looked again, it wasn't the gnome at all, but Ted, who was sitting in the middle of the rockery in these pajamas. Come on inside, Ted. You will catch your death, she called. I can't, Dorothy, he replied. I'm too ill. Help me, please. Then he got smaller and smaller, and his voice became squeaky until she could no longer hear or see him.
Okay, good. I'll have you read. Sorry, I'll have you read more, but just 1 second. Yeah. So, who is Ted? Do you guys remember who Ted is?
He is. Oh.
You guys from last week, do you remember who Ted is?
No, not actually.
Her late husband, her dead husband, right?
Oh.
She talked a little bit about this at the beginning of the story. So her late husband, her dead husband, is in her dream, sitting where the gnome is, and he's in his pajamas, in his nighttime clothes, right? And he's getting smaller and smaller, and his voice is becoming squeaky, squeaky. Shrinking into nothing, right? Crazy dream, yeah? Okay. Sorry to interrupt, Gabby, please continue.
Yeah. In the morning, Norman met her at the door looking worried. Fact is, Mrs. Graham,
Just
Miss-
Graham. Mrs. Graham.
Yeah. There is another card, he said, handing it to her. It was another view of Sydney. She turned it over quickly. Dorothy, it said that the handwriting spidery and spidery and sprawling now. So you miss you. The signature was almost
Illegible.
illegible,
Mhm.
but she knew well enough what it said. This really is beyond a joke. She said, leaning her head against me drew post. Norman,
Oops.
I think I'm going to call the police about it. It was an older officer who came this time. She told him her story and showed him the postcards, except for the one she'd burned. I
Mhm.
can see how you'd be upset, ma'am, he said in a kindly voice. It's a
Kindly.
very kindly, sorry.
Mhm.
It's a very unpleasant thing to have happen. Is there anyone you can think of who has a grudge against you?
Okay, good phrase here. Who has a grudge against you? Just a note, this word here should be the, okay? I don't know why it's wrong here, but she said leaning her head against the doorpost. So maybe cross that out and fix that. I will fix that for future things here. Okay, so she gets a postcard. The handwriting is spidery and sprawling. So the handwriting is just all over the place. Spidery means having legs out, and sprawling means moving outward, right? And the signature was almost illegible. So legible means you can read it, it's possible to read, and illegible means you can't really read it all that well. Okay. An older officer came this time. She showed everyone except for the one she had burned. Remember, she took one and burned it in the fireplace. I could see how you'd be upset. It's a very unpleasant thing to happen. Is there anyone you can think that has a grudge against you? What does it mean if someone has a grudge against you? I have a grudge against my cat. Can't stand every time I see my cat. Every time I see my cat, I
To
push
hate
her.
someone.
Yeah, a little bit. Having a little bit of animosity toward, having some anger toward, right? So hopefully no one has any grudges against you and you don't have any grudges against anybody else. Good. All right. Did anybody not read? Is Max still here? Max, can you read a little bit? Maybe. Maybe he's having technical difficulties. All right. Oh, he's here. All right.
Oh!
Norman looked almost shamefaced when he brought his postcard next day. I've read it. I suppose I shouldn't, but you mustn't get upset, he said, handing it to her. Would you like me to stay while you read it?
Okay, great. I forgot this paragraph. Sorry. So I'll read that paragraph really quick. She couldn't think of anybody that had a grudge against her. And finally, she left with the same sort of reassurance as Norman had given her. If anything unusual happens, if you see any strangers hanging out on the street, anything like that, you just be sure and call us, he said. So that's what the police were telling her. If you see anything strange, call us again. Norman looked shamefaced, brought her another postcard. Okay. Oh my gosh. She shook her head. I'll be okay. Thanks, Norman, she said, and took the card with her other mail into the kitchen. She sat down dully at the table and studied the picture of Sydney Harbor for several moments before turning the card over. Let's see. Dorothy, Doc says operation, my only hope. Pray for me. Feels so bad. The writing trailed off, and this time there was no signature. She felt her eyes stinging. She took off her glasses and put her head down in her arms. Oh, please, she sobbed. Leave me alone, whoever you are. She worked in the garden most of the day to distract herself, then went out to dinner at a little French restaurant that had just opened at the shopping mall. Coming home, she turned on the television and then, unusual for her, watched not only until the 11 o'clock news, but a late night movie that didn't end until 1. Even then, she couldn't sleep when she finally went to bed, so she turned on the light and read a biography of Catherine the Great. It wasn't until 3 in the morning that her eyes drooped and she reached out sleepily to turn off the bedside light. It seemed as if she hadn't been asleep more than a few minutes when the phone rang. The red glow of the clock radio told her that it was 5:14 a.m. Dorothy grabbed her robe from the foot of the bed and, bumping her shoulder into the door, stumbled down the hallway to the phone table. Yes, hello, she said. Is that Mrs. Dorothy Graham? A male voice, official sounding and faintly bored. Yes, who's calling? This is the CNCP Telecommunications. We have a telegram for you. Shall I read it to you? Yes, yes, but just a minute, please, while I turn on the light. I'll get a pen. Okay. All right, so kind of weird. She can't get sleep. She's just going crazy, right? All right. Lera, can you read a bit?
It wasn't like Dorothy not to be home at breakfast. Nora let the phone ring a few more times, then put down the receiver. She had thought of calling the night before, but it had been rather late when she had arrived home from the airport, so she'd waited until the morning. Perhaps Dorothy had taken ill. Nora got her handbag from the bedroom, picked up the car keys from the
Mantelpiece.
mantelpiece, and went out to the garage.
Garage, yeah.
Garage. She passed the ambulance as it pulled out of Dorothy Street. It didn't seem to be rushing, and there was no siren.
Siren.
Probably dropping someone off, coming home from hospital, Nora thought.
Okay, good. So one more clue that it's Canadian, coming home from hospital. Normally in American English, we would say coming home from the hospital, right? Very strange for me to see this no the here, okay? So Nora is back from her trip, calling her up, right? And then this is the receiver of the telephone. So she lets it ring a few times, nobody's answering, she puts the receiver down. Good, okay? Good. Yeah, this is an old time phone. Do you guys still have phones like this or no? In your home?
No.
Yes.
No? Yeah, okay, so everybody's on cell phones now. Some of you might still have these old phones. I definitely don't have an old phone like this. All right, good. Stan, can you read up to there, I guess?
Yes, sure. As she walked up the path, she was surprised to see a young man in a mailman uniform sitting on the steps with his hat in his hands. "Where's Mr. Graham?" she asked. He looked up, startled. They just took her away. "Are you Miss Graham's friend? The one that was in PEI?" Nora nodded. "She told me about you," he said. "I'm Norman." "Well, where on earth did they take her?" she said sharply. "What's the matter?"
Good.
Shall I read another one?
Yeah, sure.
"It's terrible, really," he said, almost as if he hadn't heard her. "I found her, see? I had another one of those cards for her, and I knocked on the door, but she didn't come. Well, like, I looked in the window, and I could see her lying there on the living room floor, right in front of the big window. She wasn't moving, eh? So, well, went round the back and smashed open the window.
Okay, good. So found her laying on the living room floor. Just so you know, I don't know what PEI is. It's probably some Canadian thing. Let's see. So, what's her name? Not Dorothy. Nora. Nora walks up. Mailman's head is in his hands, and he looked up, startled. Oh my gosh, someone's here. And then tells the story. All right. Let's see. Gabby, you want to read this part?
Yep. He.
She
Oh
looked.
my God. Poor connection. Oh my God. No. Oh yeah. Okay. Sorry.
No
She
problem.
just looked out of blue. I gave her mouth to mouse. He went on quickly. I tried everything, but it wasn't no good. So I called the ambulance. She was gone. Nora's
Steadied herself.
steadied herself against the wall. Gone? You look pretty shook up. You better come inside and sit down, said Norman. I'm not feeling too good myself.
Okay, good. What is mouth to mouth?
Face to face.
Okay. I gave her mouth to mouth. Anybody know?
Yeah, that's when the person is breathless and you try to bring the person back to life.
Yes,
You do
yes.
mouth.
Yeah. So when someone is not breathing, you blow into their mouth so that they get some breath. And try to revive them, right? Good. Called the ambulance. She was gone, right? So gone. This is a nice way of saying she was dead, right? Let's see. What else did I want to say? I think that's it. Okay. Bogdan, let's hear this part.
Yes. They went around to the back, and Norman showed her where he'd broken on the window and put it in his hand to open the back door. Nora walked through the empty rooms, then back to the kitchen, where Norman was making them instant coffee. I figure the postcards must have had something to do with it, he said. That was a dirty trick. What postcards?
Okay, good. So he's making instant coffee. Do you guys like instant coffee?
What's the instant coffee?
Instant coffee is the little, it looks almost like dirt, and you put it in your hot water and you mix it, and then it's
Yeah.
instant coffee.
It's
You like it? Okay, good.
Yeah.
It's good if you find a good brand, right? The thing that I found, I remembered that I wanted to talk about. Norman says, but it wasn't no good. This is a double negative, and you shouldn't speak like this, but many people do. So even sometimes when you use a double negative, wasn't no, people understand you. They just think, that's a little weird. Good. Okay, let's see. Vlad, can you read that paragraph?
Where should I begin?
Didn't she write you about them?
Didn't she write to you about them? He looked around the kitchen, then reached up on a shelf above the sink. Here they are. Someone took her gnome and started sending her postcards from all over. They are signed Mr. Gnome. Pretty weird. Yeah.
Yeah, pretty weird, eh? Good.
Nora read the cards, then laid them out on the table in front of her. This one came only today, said Norman, pulling another card from his pocket and handing it to her. Their picture was Adelaide.
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 Mhm.
Dear Dorothy. Wait. This picture was of Adelaide, dear Dorothy. Just here for a couple of days before returning to Sydney.
Mhm.
Beautiful spot. Love, Mr. Gnome. The message read.
Okay.
Nora compared the date marks. It must have been held up. It was written before some of the later ones, she said. Norman had put his cup in a sink. Anyway, I'll better get back to work. I'm way behind.
Okay.
Good.
Good. Let's hold up here. Here's a nice phrasal verb. It must have been held up. It was written before some of the later ones. What does it mean to be held up?
Put away for later.
Yeah, to be delayed. So for example, I tried to get to class on time, but I was held up because the bus wasn't available. Something like that. Yeah, good. All right, and Norman puts his cup in the sink and says, okay, I gotta go. All right, good. Paulina, can you read this part?
Yeah. Look, Norman, said Nora, making up her mind. This is all pretty fishy. I think we should call the police. How do we know something didn't happen here last night? You carry on with your road, but I'll stay here for the police. Where can they reach you if they need to? I'll give you my number at home as well as my work number, he said, pulling a red pen out of the holder in his shirt pocket. He looked around for a piece of paper, then pulled over one of the postcards and wrote in an empty space. See, that's my name, Norman Stannard, he said, handing her the card by now.
Okay, good. So Norman's getting back to work, writes his number down. Good. Let's see. Here's a good phrase. This is all pretty fishy. What does it mean to be fishy?
So strange, maybe.
Strange, right? Very, very strange way of saying things are strange, but to say something's fishy means you don't really think things are the way they seem, right? Good. Let's see. Taya, if you're still here, you want to read this part?
Okay. Nora went into the hall to phone, the card still in her hands. As she dialed, her eye got a message scribbled on the pad by the phone. The gnome died today, it said. She put the receiver back. Her heart was pounding. She looked at the cards in her hands. Beautiful spot, she read. Something tickled in the back of her brain. Two things trying to come together. She looked at the cards again, at the round, childish handwriting. Then she noticed the writing in which the name and phone numbers had been written above the address.
Okay. All right, and Max, if you're here, last paragraph.
She got up and went to the front window. Norman, his back slung over his shoulder, was walking down the street. She could hear him whistling. The tiny hairs on the back of her hands tingled. She knew someone was watching her. She didn't know how it was, but she hadn't noticed before. The gnome was back in his old place. His smile had the same insolence she had noticed when she had first seen him at the nursery.
Okay. And the story is over. Very strange, right? So the gnome is back. Let's see, not Nora notices the similarity in the handwriting. So maybe it was Norman who took the gnome and did all of these funny things. Okay. What's your impression of the story? Good story, bad story, awful, funny?
Good story.
Good story. What do you think happened to Dorothy? Do you think Norman came in? And...
I think she just got a call where a person said that the gnome was dead, and she scrambled it on the desk, and then she died of a heart attack or something like that.
Okay, okay, all right. Any other ideas? Should we read more mysteries like this? More crazy weird stories?
Yeah.
Sorry?
Yeah, why not?
All right, good. Let's see. As she dialed, her eye caught a message scribbled on the pad by the phone. So to scribble means to write very quickly, and it's on the pad next to the thing. Any other words? Any other impressions? Do you guys, Bogdan, does your gnome ever go traveling?
What?
Does you have a garden gnome, right? Or no?
Mhm.
Okay.
I
Does
have
it,
no. I don't have a garden,
okay, but you
I
have,
have,
Oh.
but you
but
have
I
the
want to
gnome.
buy gnome.
Okay, okay,
I want to buy gnome. I want a lot of gnomes.
okay, okay, good. There's a place.
From of Bogdan.
Okay, okay. there's a place in Germany, in Munich. You'll see places that have many of these gnomes. Sometimes hundreds of them in the same lawn. So maybe I can take a trip to Munich, buy one for you, and send it to you if you'd like. Okay, good. So interesting story. Maybe we'll find another one similar to it. This one wasn't so big of a mystery, right? There weren't too many characters, so it wasn't. It's kind of difficult in such a short story to throw you off and make you think that other things were happening, right? But it's pretty clear that Norman took the gnome and Norman was writing these postcards. Right? Okay, good. There might be some trivia about this story later on in our lessons. Maybe not. But next week, I was asked about playing a game, and that game is called Secret Hitler. Okay, this is a card game in which you essentially, it's kind of like Mafia. Let me get a video and explain. But I found this website where we can all play together online. Okay. So if you can, go to this website. We'll bring up the chat. Put it in the chat. Oops. There we go. There we go. And there we go. So you have to make an account there, but it's not a big deal, right? They just ask for a username and a password. So put that in. And then when you get in there, it shows you how to play and everything. We can make a private game where only we are in the game together, but it's a card game. So let me show you how it works. Stan and Vlad and I played this game together. Let's see. This one's better. Okay.
At the beginning of the game, player players are divided into two teams. Most players will be liberals. Their goal is to hold the government together and prevent Hitler from taking power. But some players will be fascists. Their goal is to take over the government and install secret Hitler as chancellor. After roles have been dealt, there will be a brief night for the fascists to reveal themselves to each other and find out who Hitler is. But Hitler won't know the identities of the other fascists. After the night phase, select a player at random to be the first president. In Secret Hitler, teams race to complete their agenda before the other team. Fascists need to enact 6 fascist policies to complete their agenda and win the game, and liberals need to enact 5 liberal policies. Each round, the table will elect a president and a chancellor together as a ticket. First, the president nominates another player to be chancellor. The whole table then votes on this new proposed government. If the vote fails, the president loses the opportunity to be elected, and the presidential placard moves clockwise. If a government is successfully elected, the president and chancellor must enact a new policy card. Policy cards are either liberal or fascist, and they come from a deck that has 11 fascist policies and 6 liberal policies. In order to enact the new policy, the president draws 3 policies from the policy deck, looks at them in secret, discards one face down, and passes the other 2 to the chancellor. The chancellor also discards one face down and enacts the remaining policy card face up. If the government enacts a liberal, the liberals are one step closer to holding the government together. However, if the president and chancellor enact a fascist card, you must try to figure out what went wrong. Perhaps the president and the chancellor are liberals and they received a bad draw. Or perhaps a fascist infiltrated the government and discarded a liberal policy in secret. Players are free to lie about almost anything in the game, so the president and the chancellor can't be trusted. Sometimes the chancellor and president won't even agree about what they've seen. It's up to the other players to find out which one is telling the truth and which one is a cold-blooded fascist. When a new fascist policy is passed, the government becomes more powerful. Even the liberals have attempted to pass fascist policies so that they will be able to investigate players' party memberships, meddle with elections, and execute other players. If a liberal player is able to gain an execution power and assassinate Hitler, the liberals immediately win the game. However, if you miss your shot and kill too many liberals, the voting majority will swing to the fascists. The clock is ticking. Can you find your allies and forge the bonds of trust necessary to stem the rising tide of fascism? Can you steer the government along the narrow path, taking only as much power as you need? Pull back from the brink of war? Can you find and stop the secret Hitler?
It's very dramatic, eh?
Yeah.
All right. So I hope this game looks like it'll be a lot of fun. It's every time I've played it, I usually play it in person with all of the students in the same room, and I've had very few students not like the game. So it should be fun. We'll see how you guys like it. Okay. So make an account at that website, and then next week we will try playing it. Sound good?
Yeah.
Yes, definitely.
Yes.
I think I saw some Russian streamers play Secret Hitler like us online, and it went great. I think it will be much fun.
Okay, good, good. And just so you know, I mean, it looks a little bit complicated. And the first time you play it, you might not really understand all of the strategy. But Stan and Vlad can tell you that you pick it up very quickly, and it's a lot of fun the second and third time you play. Okay. Okay. Good. So that's the lesson for this week. Paulina, do you think you will keep coming?
Yes.
Okay, great, good. And then Taya and Max, hopefully we'll have you here next week as well, and you could play the game with us. Okay, good. Does anybody have any questions? Any comments?
No.
No.
Okay, then have a good week, everybody. Thank you for coming, and thank you for reading the story with me. Wish you were here. Okay.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you.
Thank you for
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.